At the state level, of course, we have a different system. For judges in Florida, we have a system of elections for the trial court judges, and they face regular periodic elections, and people can run against them, and it works like our ordinary election system operates. For the appellate judges in Florida, the judges of the district courts of appeal and the Florida Supreme Court, we have a system which is referred to as merit retention. And under that system, the judges periodically, and judges essentially get a 6-year term, although when they're first appointed, they're up for a merit retention vote at the first election that occurs at least a year after, first general election that occurs at least a year after their appointment. So in the merit retention election, the voters are asked a question with respect to each judge who's up, and that is, shall Judge so-and-so be retained in office, yes or no? And so the people actually have an opportunity then to vote a particular justice or judge out of office for whatever reason they think they should not continue in office. And I think that's the check and the accountability mechanism that we have. Now, for certain types there are other accountability mechanisms for state judges for types of misconduct. It would not be misconduct related to deciding a case where the judges, did something that might be viewed as exceeding the proper role, but things that are really misconduct in a different sense, and that the Judicial Qualifications Commission deals with that, and ultimately the Florida Supreme Court has responsibility for disciplining judges. Is that responsive? Kind of?
Yeah, it says we can do that.
Well, I mean, it is true that under the federal system, the mechanisms for accountability are limited. And that is the way that it was set up in the Constitution. But it is quite limited. In the states, it's a little different. There's more direct accountability built into our Constitution for the judges. Yes?
Thank you, Mr. Chief Justice. My question is, can you just comment a little bit about the British influence on the Constitution, specifically the Bill of Rights?
Well, I think that the British influence, and I don't profess to be an expert on that, but is great. I think in many ways our notions about liberty and individual rights are rooted in the rights of Englishmen. And the experience, of course, we have the Revolution where the rights of Englishmen were not being honored for the colonists, and that's what brought on the Revolution. And those are all complicated issues, but I think in some substance that's what it is. So the English system, although in some respects very different in the sense that the English do not have a written constitution in the same way that we do, and they don't. I think we have, under our system, we have taken the rule of law to a different level and really put it on a firm foundation with a written constitution. Although I have great respect for the British institutions, but I do prefer a republic to a monarchy, and so we have a republic. But I think we should remain mindful of the great debt we do owe to the people who, throughout many years, fought for liberty in Great Britain, because in some ways, we have carried that on, that tradition here in the United States, and I think just carried it further. That's responsive. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Justice, and Dr. Clerk, for putting this on to the James Madison Institute. I'd love to ask you about the Florida Innocence Commission we just put up, but I think the more pressing issue is about the independence and the funding of the court system, which you mentioned, and how the court system must be funded and must be independent from the legislature. It's the third branch of government. With your unique experience having been in the legislative branch, do you think kind of solution by which we can ensure funding from the legislature to the court system, setting up the trust fund, unviable trust fund with court fees, or did that create too many problems as well? Any kind of change to the Florida Constitution? And also, if you don't mind, Mr. Justice, on this day, do you have a favorite time to bother and why?
Well, that's hard. I mean, certainly today, I voted Hamilton, but I'm also very fond of Madison. So, and I will also have to say, in some ways, we refer to the second American founding and Abraham Lincoln, and I have a great deal of Abraham Lincoln, who I think helped secure the perpetuation of liberty and constitutional government. And some people might disagree with some things Lincoln did, but when I think of the great leaders for whom we owe deep gratitude, I think not only of the founders, Hamilton, Madison, and Washington, who played such a pivotal role in the founding and in the early days of our republic, not to mention the Revolution, but also of Lincoln, who I think had the responsibility for holding our nation together. But back to the courts and court funding, we are grateful that the legislature has established a trust fund for court funding. The legislature has, over the period of time beginning back in the 2007-2008 fiscal year, just faced an enormous challenge. And as someone who has served in the legislature previously, I am very sympathetic with the challenge that they have faced. When I was in the legislature, we had some, which is a long time ago. I won't even tell you how long ago that was. But when I was there, we had some ups and downs and some difficulties. We never had anything that came close to the fiscal crisis that has confronted our state in the last few years. It is really unprecedented. I think in the lifetime of anyone who's still around the Capitol. It's been a very difficult time. So I'm very grateful to the legislature for the work they have done to try to help protect our funding. And I will tell you that we went through a series of cuts in the judicial branch. At the beginning of the fiscal crisis, we've actually had some of that funding restored, but we're still not back to the level that was originally appropriated for us in 2007 and 2008. And the reality is that the Florida judicial system is a lean system. If you look at our system and you compare it to other states, you can see that it's lean. One way of comparing it is to look at the number of judges we have per capita. And we have about 4.7 judges per 100,000, trial judges per 100,000 population. Well, there are many states that have more than twice as many judges per capita. And we actually rank 45th in all the states in the number of judges per capita. Now, I wouldn't suggest that we need to be in the top tier, okay? I don't advocate that. But I do believe that illustrates that we have a pretty lean system. And we have been working hard and trying to find ways to operate more effectively and efficiently. We're not perfect. There are always things that we can learn and things that we can do better. And we are constantly striving to do that. But I'm really very proud of the judges in our system who I think have done the best they can to rise to the challenge. Because not only have we had a reduction in funding and a loss of critical support personnel in our judicial system, but we have faced a significantly increasing workload because of the housing crisis and the foreclosure crisis, which has just totally inundated our judicial system. Now, the legislature has helped us with that, and they've provided some funds that are specifically dedicated to trying to eliminate that backlog that we have. And so I'm very grateful for that. So I'm not here to propose an amendment to the Constitution, but I am interested in doing what I can and working with the legislature to try to get funding for the judicial system in this state on as solid and predictable a foundation as possible. But I thank you for your interest in your question. Yes?
Good evening. Just a reiteration, I guess, thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Thanks to Jay Mike for putting this on. I know they gave us a little backdrop on, what you've done for what you've done for your Chief Justice, and I was just wondering if you could give us a little more information, I guess, about what school you attend, and I guess a little advice to someone who would like to eventually become a Chief Justice or the Supreme Court Justice.
Okay, well, I'll be happy to do that. I will say I have followed a rather unusual path to become Chief Justice of Florida. I'm not sure that, 10 years ago, I don't think that would have been something that I would have thought would be in the range of possibilities or something that I would do. But that's the way it's worked out, and I'm very grateful that I've had that opportunity. But, I to give you my brief bio, I grew up in Lakeland, and I went to the public schools there. Then I went to a little college outside of Philadelphia called Haverford College, which is a small liberal arts college. From there, I went to law school at Yale, and then after my time there, I came back to Florida and practiced law with a large law firm here in Florida. It was in my hometown of Lakeland, a law firm called Hall & Knight. I stayed with them for not too long, and then I had the bug to run for the legislatures, which I did, and I lost. I was running against an incumbent, and I was not successful. But I thought I had done well enough that I was willing to try again. So after that first loss in my political career, 2 years later, I came back and ran again, and I was successful. I defeated the incumbent I'd run against the first time, and so I was elected to the legislature. I served there for 6 years, and then I ran for the state senate after serving in the House, and I lost. I lost in a very close race. There were circumstances I won't get into that led to that, but it was part of the atmosphere and my particular designation as I was running. But anyway, I thought, well, that may be it. That may be the end of my time in politics, and maybe in any sort of public service. But then, 2 years after I'd lost that Senate race, my congressman was going to retire, and I just thought I'd be interested in that, and I was able to obtain the nomination of the party I was running in unopposed, and was able to get elected to the U.S. Congress. Now, you'd think it's kind of strange for someone who's run for a state Senate seat and lost to turn right around and win a race for Congress. Because you think, if you can't win the seat that's at a lower level in the system, why do you think you could win at a higher level? Well, when I decided to run for Congress, I had encouragement from the fact that the incumbent congressman there, a man named Andy Ireland, for whom I have a great deal of respect, had done the same thing. He had run for the state Senate and lost, and then a couple of years later, run for Congress and won. So I thought, Andy did it, maybe I can too. And so I was very grateful to have that opportunity. And then I served there. I made a commitment to serve no more than 4 consecutive terms in the House. And when my 4 terms were up, I retired. Now, I retired from Congress, not from working. So I needed some place to go. And while I was there, really, about halfway through my last year, maybe not even halfway through my last year in Congress, I received a call from the governor of Florida who asked me, who told me that his general counsel was leaving to go back into the private sector, and the governor wondered if I might possibly have any interest in serving his general counsel. And I said, well, Governor, I'd be happy to talk to you about that. I said, I need to talk to my wife first. But I talked to my wife, and then I called him back, and I said, well, I would like to talk to you about it. So I came down, and we met, and he said he wanted me to be his general counsel. And I said, well, I got to talk to my wife again. And I talked to my wife, and then I accepted.